It was a hot July afternoon in the city of Taoyuan when a tour bus carrying tourists from mainland China made its way toward the airport. The group had spent more than a week traveling across Taiwan, stopping at temples, markets, and city landmarks before finally turning back home. Their luggage was packed beneath the bus, boarding passes ready, and the ride ahead was supposed to be the last short stretch of their journey. The bus driver noticed smoke at the front of the bus, and within moments the vehicle burst into flames. Struggling to control it, he swerved until the bus scraped against the guardrail and came to a stop on the side of the highway. Then the fire spread from inside, engulfing the cabin. There were 26 people on board, but not a single one made it out. The tourists were part of a package tour organized by a Kaohsiung-based agency. These kinds of low-cost tours were popular at the time, offering mainland visitors a fast 8-day circuit through Taiwan's major cities and attractions. The schedule was full: scenic stops, temples, night markets, shopping excursions, and pre-arranged group meals. Hotels and transport were handled from start to finish, with the same bus carrying the group throughout the journey. The 24 visitors came mostly from Dalian in China's northeast. Many were middle-aged or elderly, traveling with relatives and close friends, though 3 younger people were also part of the group. The youngest was only 11 years old. They had come to Taiwan as families and neighbors, bound by the same itinerary and the same desire to see the island together. Their guide, Cheng Kun Wen, had accompanied them every step of the way, managing schedules and smoothing communication along the route. At the wheel was 53-year-old Su Ming Cheng, an experienced driver responsible for the long hours of highway travel. Over the course of the trip, the group built a small moving community, sharing snacks, swapping seats, and passing long hours on the road together. By July 19, 2016, the journey was nearly finished. That morning in Taipei, the passengers gathered in the hotel lobby, wheeling out bags that had been packed the night before. Suitcases were loaded into the compartments beneath the bus as the group climbed the steps. The guide greeted them at the door, checking names and reminding them of flight details. Inside, travelers settled into familiar seats. Some leaned back quietly, ready for the final transfer. A few compared photos on their phones, pointing out favorite stops from the trip. Others shared snacks across the aisle. After more than a week together, the formality of the first day was gone. By now, they moved with the ease of people who had spent long days and nights side by side. With everyone accounted for, the bus pulled into traffic. Ahead was a short drive west along the freeway, then the final walk through security before boarding their flight home. Around 1 p.m., the bus entered freeway number 2. The road was wide, traffic steady, and to passing motorists, it looked like an ordinary afternoon. Then, only minutes into the drive, something was clearly wrong. From behind, drivers noticed a thin trail of smoke rising from the front of the bus. At first, it blended with the heat, rippling off the pavement, but quickly it thickened, curling up along the roofline. Inside, passengers began coughing as haze drifted through the aisle. Some stood, trying to see what was happening near the driver's seat, where flames had already begun to spread. The bus lurched left, scraping the median divider with a screech of metal. Then it drifted across the lanes until the right side guardrail caught and held it in place. Sparks flashed, the frame shuddered, and the vehicle came to a stop. Cars behind braked hard and pulled to the shoulder. Several drivers ran forward with fire extinguishers. A patrol officer who had seen the smoke also rushed in. They struck at the glass and pulled at the doors, but the heat drove them back. Smoke poured from the openings, and within seconds, the entire front of the bus was in flames. Inside the cabin, panic spread as quickly as the fire. The main door at the front was already swallowed by flames. Passengers pressed toward the rear, hoping to escape through the secondary exit, but the collision with the guardrail had pinned the door shut. There was also an emergency exit in the middle of the left side of the bus. In theory, it should have provided another way out. But the cabin was already filled with thick smoke, making movement difficult and disorienting. On the outside, rescuers tried pulling at the handle, but the door would not open. It had been fitted with a modified lock that kept it secured from both directions, turning an escape route into another dead end. Window hammers were mounted nearby, but in the choking darkness they were almost impossible to find. Flames raced across the ceiling, cutting off the rows one after another, until movement through the aisle was nearly impossible. By the time firefighters arrived, the entire bus was burning. Crews doused the flames and forced the doors open, but it was already too late. The bus had stopped less than 5 minutes' drive from the terminal. Overhead, planes rose and descended, visible through the thick column of smoke that marked the crash site. Drivers on the freeway stood beside their cars, watching in silence as the firefighters battled the blaze. When the flames were finally extinguished, what remained was a charred shell, windows blown out, and luggage scattered along the guardrail. Firefighters and medical teams moved carefully through the wreckage, carrying victims out one by one. At the back of the bus, many of the bodies were found piled together, a grim sign that passengers had pressed toward the rear in a final attempt to escape. Their position showed the desperation inside the cabin, people crowded at exits that never opened. Not a single person had survived. 26 lives had ended on a highway within sight of the airport. As the smoke cleared, the focus shifted to how this had happened. How could the fire take hold so quickly, and why had no one managed to get out? At first, an electrical fault seemed the likely cause. Bus fires often begin with wiring near the driver's controls, and witnesses had described smoke starting at the front. Inspectors also noted that the rear door appeared to have a locking mechanism, something not permitted on emergency exits. That raised the possibility that modifications had trapped passengers inside. But before long, evidence pointed in a different direction. Among the wreckage, several plastic containers were discovered. Tests confirmed that they contained gasoline. This single detail ruled out the idea of an accidental electrical fire. At the same time, toxicology results showed alcohol in the driver's system, above the legal limit. Suddenly, the focus shifted from mechanical failure to deliberate action. The driver, Su Ming Cheng, was 53 years old. He had spent years behind the wheel, but his personal life had grown troubled. Only weeks earlier, he had been convicted of sexually assaulting a female tour guide, a charge that carried a 4-year prison sentence. He remained free on bail while appealing the case. Relatives said he had spoken of despair during the time and had hinted at ending his life. On July 19, Su carried gasoline onto the bus in containers, poured it near the front, and set it alight while driving toward the airport. As the fire spread, he lost control and the vehicle veered into the guardrail and stopped. With exits blocked and smoke filling the cabin, the passengers stood no chance of survival. Because the driver also died in the blaze, the case never went to trial. But the conclusion was clear. The fire had been deliberately set. The devastation was total. The fire began at the front, sealing off the main door almost instantly. The rear exit was crushed against the guardrail, and the side emergency door was locked by a modification that kept it shut from both the inside and outside. The windows might have been an option, but the cabin was already dark with smoke. The hammers were difficult to find, and the fire spread too quickly. Toxic fumes overtook the passengers within minutes. Outside, people tried breaking through the glass, but the flames forced them back. Even though help arrived quickly, the exits were blocked, the air unbreathable, and survival was impossible. The 24 tourists from Dalian included 15 women, 6 men, and 3 young people. There were families, neighbors, and friends who had come to Taiwan for a summer holiday. Their guide, Chen Kun Wen, was 33. He had worked in the tourism industry for years, bridging the gap between mainland visitors and local operators. He died alongside the group he had led across the island. In the days that followed, relatives from Liaoning province flew to Taiwan. They gathered in temporary memorial halls, identified loved ones, and arranged for remains to be returned home. For many, it was their first time in Taiwan, and it came under circumstances they could never have imagined. Memorials in both Dalian and Taoyuan filled with wreaths, candles, and photographs of the victims. Rows of chairs were set up for grieving relatives who wept quietly as names were read aloud. The scale of the loss was overwhelming. An entire tour group, along with their guide, gone in a single tragedy. The fire forced Taiwan to confront weaknesses in bus safety. The Directorate General of Highways ordered urgent inspections across all fleets. More than half of the buses checked failed the first round, with issues ranging from faulty wiring to emergency exits that did not open as required. Officials instructed operators to remove any locks or aftermarket devices from emergency doors immediately. Window hammers had to be visible and within reach. Electrical systems were to be inspected for unauthorized modifications. Every exit had to be usable in an emergency, and no cost-saving measure could compromise safety again. The disaster also cast a harsh light on Taiwan's low-cost tour industry. These trips were marketed at prices families could afford, but the tight schedules and pressure to reduce costs placed heavy strains on drivers, guides, and vehicles. Critics argued that the system encouraged cutting corners, even in areas that affected passenger safety. Although this tragedy was ultimately caused by the driver's actions, it exposed vulnerabilities in the broader industry. Regulators emphasized the need for stricter oversight so that passengers would never again find themselves trapped by systems that failed when they were needed most. By September 2016, prosecutors announced their findings. They stated that the fire had been intentionally set by the driver. With him among the dead, the case was closed. The Taoyuan bus fire remains one of Taiwan's deadliest road disasters. 26 people lost their lives in a blaze that left no survivors and no escape. That's it for the video. If you made it all the way to the end, thank you. I would really appreciate it if you can support the channel so that one day I can offer you a much better experience. Have a good, wonderful day or night, and I will see you on the next video.